And so now I'd like to introduce Emily and Eve. A warm welcome. Emily Jeanne Brown and Eve Marie Mugar, both class of 2011. Emily is a performing artist and embodied voice coach. And Eve is a psychotherapist and yoga and meditation instructor. Emily was a theater major at Smith, went on to earn her MFA in acting from the American Conservatory Theater. And Eve was a theater major with a minor in linguistics. I'm feeling like I really need that today. And went on to earn her MSW from New York University. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to both of you.
Thank you so much, Amy. We're really excited to be here. Oh, and the poll just popped up, and I'm seeing that 34% of you are saying that visiting friends and relatives is the thing that you miss the most with human connection. Although we also have a significant amount of people who miss spontaneous social interaction. That's a good one too. The possibility for those spontaneous meetings in person. Yeah, and not to bring us down right from the get-go here, but as we speak, hopefully we'll shift our ideas about how we can use video call platforms to feel more organic connection with our friends and loved ones. Cool, so thank you for participating in that poll. I'm just gonna tell you a little bit more about who I am. My name is Emily Jeanne Brown, as Amy said, and I graduated from Smith in 2011. I'm an actor, a singer, a teaching artist, and an embodied voice coach based in Brooklyn, New York. And my coaching and consulting is directly informed by my background in the arts, which has really shaped what I value most. Things like the power of storytelling, the value of collaboration, utilizing the body as a foundation for effective communication, as well as authentic expression in a more creative sense. And maybe most importantly, investing in the human imagination in order to transform human experience. So in my work with clients, I draw from the breath work and voice work that I learned in my actor training, as well as my classical singing background and my personal mindfulness and yoga practice to help individuals and groups improve their communication, their collaboration, and their leadership skills in both in person when we can and in digital spaces. And on a macro level, I'm really interested in helping people approach their work with more embodiment so that they can feel more involved in their work and help to contribute to inclusive and progressive communities and work environments. So that's a little bit more about me and what I bring with me to this presentation today.
Hello, I am Eve Marie Mugar, and I also have a background in the performing arts, and I studied theater at Smith. And 4 years ago, I actually transitioned away from my career in acting and into teaching yoga and meditation. And I spent a year living as an intern at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, that's in the Berkshires in Western Mass. And in that time, I realized that as much as I loved teaching yoga and still love teaching yoga, I wanted to be able to help people a little more directly than I could as a yoga teacher. And so I went to NYU for social work. I just graduated in May, and this fall I'll begin working as a therapist in a group practice in New York. And I am always looking for ways to make these transformational practices of yoga, meditation, and other contemplative practices more accessible for more people. So that means both bringing it to different communities, but also offering bite-sized practices that can fit into people's busy lives, which is a bit of what we are offering you today. So Emily and I met at Smith, and we were in plays together, and we collaborated on an original theater project in our senior year. And it wasn't too long ago that we just realized that we had a really aligned vision of wanting to share the tools that we had learned through creative collaboration, through yoga, through mindfulness, and share those tools with others to help them navigate a variety of situations and circumstances. So last year, we collaborated on our very first workshop called Connect and Create. And this was designed to give people mindfulness and embodiment tools to access their creativity, even when they felt uninspired or generally felt disconnected. Then the pandemic hit, And we took the same principles and adapted them to the circumstances and developed a workshop to help people explore their relationship to video calls in order to help them open up to new possibilities for what this virtual experience could be like. So in the next hour, we are going to cover concepts and tools that can help you engage with video calls a little differently, perhaps, than you have been. So we're going to go to the next slide and I'll tell you what we're going to cover. So Emily will start us off by talking about this idea of engaging the space. She'll talk about the concept of endowing the space, spatial awareness, and the importance of creating a ritual around preparing for a Zoom call or a video call. I'm going to talk about engaging the self, and that means engaging and connecting with the mind and body. I'm going to talk about the importance of regulating the nervous system, and I'm going to lead you through a 5 senses meditation. Then it'll go back to Emily. She'll get to talk about engaging with others. She'll talk about these ideas of anchoring and noticing, cultivating curiosity and flexibility. So I will pass it on now to Emily.
Great. So many of the tools that we're going to talk about today have to do with the difference between a passive and an intentional engagement. And Amy, you can put it to the next slide. So we can't control our circumstances, right? We can't control that we're living through a global pandemic right now and that it's really difficult to meet in person, but we can control how we respond to our circumstances. And how we respond to them affects the way we feel. It affects the way that we experience them. So that may seem really simple to say, but for me at least, it's one of those things that I really have to repeat to myself, because for me, and I'm sure for many of us, it isn't the default to be going through my day with intention all the time, right? Things get in the way and we become busy and we lose, centering with that at times. So what do we know about video calls? You can put it to the next slide, Amy. So we know that video calls do cause fatigue for real science-backed reasons. And some of these reasons have to do with the fact that we can't make real eye contact. So though we may feel like we're looking at people and people are looking at us, we're not actually making eye contact with people. Social cues are obscured. So we have laggy internet, we have people trying to talk one at a time, which is kind of a theater exercise actually, but it's really difficult to do on the internet. And probably most to me, one of the biggest things I would say is looking at ourselves, right? Like even right now as I'm speaking to you, I'm sharing these ideas, I know what I'm gonna say, but I'm also taking in information about what I look like as I do it. So I'm sort of constantly analyzing my own behavior, and that can cause anxiety. So it's really easy to feel powerless, especially because fatigue makes us feel disconnected and therefore passive. So we engage with these platforms in a passive way. So we kind of land on this formula. If video calls create fatigue, and video calls are required for socializing, for seeing friends and loved ones, for working, for teaching, then fatigue must also be required, right? That it's the only way to do it. We just have to power through, and that's the only solution. So we kind of settle into this assumption that because we have real experience of feeling a certain way, of feeling fatigued, that that's the only way that it's possible for us to feel in relation to this tool, this video platform. So how can we move from this passive kind of engagement with video calls to a more intentional one? You can go to the next slide. So what we suggest in all of these tools that we're offering today are a few actions that can help to just shift your expectations of what your experience will be. And that hopefully by shifting your expectation, you can begin to transform your experience. So how do you do that? The first thing I'm going to talk about, as Eve said, is engaging your space. So as I mentioned, my background is in acting. And when we do scene work as actors, when we are in rehearsal and we are working to tell the story in the most truthful, engaging way, although we may be working in an empty room with a few random pieces of furniture, if you've ever taken an acting class, you probably have seen the ubiquitous black boxes. We aren't acting in a vacuum. So the story that we're telling has to be grounded in the physical location of the scene, both real in terms of the architecture and the negative space that we're inhabiting and the spatial awareness, as well as imagined, so the location of the play, right? So we learn through actor training to endow the space. And what that means is that we do really specific imaginative work to connect with where the scene is taking place and how that affects the story we're telling. We also learn that spatial awareness, becoming aware of our three-dimensional body in relation to the architecture, the other people in the scene, is really crucial to giving an effective performance and being able to respond to a scene partner with more agility and authenticity, and to stay grounded in ourselves as we do that. Excuse me. So one of my favorite pieces of advice that I received as an actor is that before a performance, before a show, one of the best ways to warm up is to spend time in the theater before the house is open, before the audience comes into the room, and to warm up in the theater. So I do my vocal warm up, I do my physical warm up, and as I do that, I'm relating to the physical space that I'm about to fill with my energy, right? That I'm gonna fill with the story that I'm trying to tell. So I'm on the stage, I'm feeling the dimensions of the stage, and I'm looking out into the audience, but I'm also walking through the seats of the theater all the way to the very back row and looking from that perspective at the stage. And I'm breathing in relation, I'm moving my body in relation to all of this. So this really helps me to communicate into the space and to feel grounded in the context of the space where I'm going to be telling the story that I'm going to be telling. And so for a video call, endowing the real space that you inhabit by connecting to the details in your room, developing spatial awareness by moving through the room and going through a tactile experience is really going to help you to feel grounded by keeping you aware of your dimensionality, of your three dimensions as a human being as you interact with others on the call. So you don't get narrowly focused into this four-sided box that can feel really disembodied and disconnected. So how do we do that? So we want to set up the space before we get onto the call, and not just set up the space, but engage the space, right? So some of the things that we suggest may feel familiar to you. Clearing clutter is one. So I just want to mention that this is less about worrying how you look on screen, and it's more about how you feel, right, in a clear, decluttered space. We actually suggest creating dimension behind you. So this may seem counterintuitive to what some sort of Zoom rules have told you about setting up in front of maybe like a neutral wall. We feel like we have to hide our space and just show a blank background, but the truth is dimensionality and detail are actually helpful for our colleagues to contextualize us in our space, as long as the space is decluttered, right, and not distracting. And it can also help you when you're looking at yourself to remind you of the room that you're inhabiting and remind you of your back body, not just putting energy out from the front into the screen, but being aware of everything that's behind you and the space that you are inhabiting. Another suggestion is to choose a chair that feels good to you. So, you know, do you like to have a harder wooden chair to give you a little more rooting and support? Or do you prefer something more springy, like an office chair? There's no right choice about what type of chair to pick, but it's about allowing yourself to make the choice, right? To go through that process of being intentional about how you set up your space versus passive. Another really important one that you may have heard before is to make sure there's a light source in front of you. So whether it's natural light or a lamp, this is really going to help your colleagues see the detail in your face, read your facial expressions, and humanize you, right? So just to give you an example, I have a couple lights on right now. I'm doing the full actor thing here, but if I turn this light off, notice the difference. And I have another light over here. So if that's off and I'm just going with natural light, notice the difference that this makes in terms of how you relate to me. I'm looking at my picture here and it's super bright in the background, but I'm sort of just this disembodied blob. So it really helps to have those lights in front of you. Then another one that I notice all the time is adjusting the camera so that it's at eye level. so that you're connecting with people right there, right? And you are able to feel as close to making real eye contact as possible within the constraints of this medium. So bringing the camera to eye level really helps colleagues connect. And I actually like to prop up my laptop on a couple of books so that I can angle the screen correctly. So right now, if I take a couple of the books off, if you have my video up, you can see this. So now I'm a little out of frame. If my screen is tilted like this, you're getting a really nice view of my ceiling fan. And again, this may feel really obvious, but these little adjustments can make such a huge difference to how your colleagues are able to connect with you, but also just taking the time to set that up, to make my little stack of books and to get the angle right. The way that I go through that action is really what I want to emphasize here. And then the last one that's really, really important is to bring an object into the space that you feel connected to. I like to call this an anchor object, and Eve is going to be talking more about what that means to anchor throughout the video call. But so for me, I have a chunk of rose quartz that I like to hang on to. I think it's great to have something tactile that you can hold, although it could also be a piece of art nearby or something that you can kind of glance on. It should be something that you feel some type of connection to. So for me, the tactile connection with this really helps to bring me back into my body when I start to kind of float off into Zoom land, and just helps remind me to reconnect with my body and my breath in the space. So Amy, you can go to the next slide. And I already kind of mentioned this, but of course, you know, we can go through this checklist in a really disembodied way and make it more about the aesthetic or how we appear to other people. And what I really want to emphasize is that engaging the space is about the approach to the way that you set the room up, right? So of course this takes time. It takes time to declutter. It takes time to find your object and to set up your computer and make sure your internet's running right. So if you can, give yourself time to do this. And it could be 2 minutes, 2 dedicated minutes, or it could be 20 minutes, right? But it's less about what you do than how you do it. And as you're going through these actions, to notice your breath. Notice if you're breathing, right? To feel that you're going through a ritual of preparation. That these preparatory actions are things that you repeat before you go onto your video call, to create that sense of ritual. And this is a big one for me too, to feel my feet coming into contact with the ground. Sometimes when I start to get disembodied, I notice that I almost curl my feet as I'm walking around. And so just making a slight adjustment as you're doing these preparatory actions and placing your full foot on the earth as you walk can make a huge difference. So this is your opportunity to connect with a real environment before you enter into this virtual environment that you're about to enter into. Yeah, and I think that's about all I have to say about engaging the space. So I'm gonna hand it over to Eve, and she's gonna talk about how to bring it in and engage the self.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about the idea of engaging the self before a Zoom call. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So when I say engage the self, I'm talking about engaging or connecting with the mind and body through a form of mindful meditation and or mindful movement. So we're gonna put a poll up right now so I can get a sense of what everyone's relationship is with this word or concept of mindfulness. So there'll be a poll, there we go. Yeah, so that way we'll get a sense of who we have in the room here. Okay. So as you're doing that, if you're not sure even what mindfulness is, a mindfulness practice is one where you practice having non-judgmental, that's key, non-judgmental present moment awareness. And we're going to try this out later. So if you're not familiar with this kind of practice, you'll get a sense of what I mean. So there are a lot of different kinds. Oh, here we go. How would you describe relationship with mindfulness? Oh, nice. Wow, 43%. Mindfulness is a part of my everyday life. That's so cool. I love the option of the answer. I've tried a mindfulness practice. It was fine. Never tried it, 4%, not for me, 4%. Okay, very cool. Well, we've got a lot of people, but still over 50% are saying not a part of my everyday life. So it's really, there's so many different kinds of ways to be mindful because it's just about connecting to the present moment. And so that could be at any time of your day, right? And there are different kinds of mindful meditation, different kinds of mindful movement. So there's really something for everyone. And we can practice being present with just about anything, including what Emily was just talking about. That can be its own kind of meditation as well. If you do that really mindfully, with intention, it can have some of the same effects as what I am going to talk about. So let's go to the next slide. All right, disembodied Zoom zombies. So even before we were spending all this time on Zoom, right, before the pandemic, before we were constantly in front of screens, many of us have been living our lives as these like disembodied heads, right? Just completely cut off from what's going on beneath the neck, right? We're just living like these eyeballs with a brain behind it. And when we get on a video call, it's so easy to get into that disembodied Zoom zombie state where we're just like sucked into the screen and we kind of numb out and the body numbs out. For example, check in right now with your hands and your feet. Just notice, were you aware of them before while I was talking or while Emily was talking? Just notice, how does it feel to bring awareness to them right now? Maybe as I continue to speak, you can continue to bring awareness below the neck, right? To hands, feet, your sits bones on your chair. Because we're often neglecting the body and we get absorbed into the screen, we miss out on a more embodied experience of life, right? One where more energy and vitality is circulating through a whole being, where we feel more grounded, more connected to the earth. And if we're more connected to the body, we can pick up on signs of stress just as it's beginning, right? Before it becomes overwhelming, before we're totally exhausted. When we're more connected to the body, we're more in tune with tension just as it begins to build, instead of only noticing it at the point when it becomes intolerable, right? That's when it's kind of too late, right? We want to start noticing when it's arising in the body just as it's starting. And that's one of the reasons that many of us leave a video call feeling really drained. It's just not a very embodied experience to be on a video call. So we get sucked into the screen, we forget about our bodies, we forget about our real present moment experience in the room that we are in. So it's really helpful to develop a deeper, more intimate relationship with your body and learn for yourself, what does it feel like when my nervous system is feeling imbalanced? What does it feel like when I'm just starting to get stressed? What does it feel like when my energy is starting to get drained? Not what does it feel like when I'm completely drained and zapped, right? That feeling is more evident. I think a lot of us know what it feels like to be totally drained, but what does it feel like just when it's beginning to happen? So then the next step is how to bring yourself back to a state of equanimity when you notice that that's beginning to happen. So one's ability to recognize an imbalance in the nervous system and then bring it back to a state of equanimity is known as the ability to self-regulate. And humans also have the ability to co-regulate, which is one of the great benefits of a good human relationship, is we regulate each other's nervous systems. I think if we go into a video call recognizing it as an opportunity for co-regulation and connection, we maybe will view it with less resistance. But good co-regulation isn't necessarily going to happen if the people going into it are feeling frazzled and disconnected from their bodies and generally dysregulated. So then the question is, how do we regulate the nervous system? Not only to make a video call a more pleasant experience for ourselves, but also for others. I say at the end of all the yoga classes that I teach, honor yourself for showing up today. Recognizing that taking this time for yourself has a great impact on all those you come into contact with, even in cyberspace. And I think we could all use that reminder that taking care of ourselves does benefit others. So I'm going to talk a bit about what we can do to get into that state of calm, presence, open awareness, where you're feeling more connected to yourself and the space around you. So we'll go to the next slide. So one really great way to get really present before a video call and start to down-regulate, so you shift into the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest nervous system as opposed to the fight or flight. So one great way to do that is to do a 5 senses meditation, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a meditation on the 5 senses. And it can be as short or as long as you want it to be. I'm going to lead you through a 5-minute version, so we'll spend approximately 1 minute on each sense. So Emily showed us how to be intentional about the space that we're in for the video call, begin to relate to the space that we're in. And this is another way to develop a relationship to the space we're in externally, as well as relating to the space that we are in internally. So the idea is with engaging the space, we set up the space, we engage with it, and then now we settle into it. So before I lead you through the meditation, I want to talk briefly about sitting. Not a lot of us love sitting all day long or hours and hours in front of the computer. So it can get uncomfortable, and this is a really great place where we can get intentional instead of passive, just like what Emily was talking about, this idea of intentionality instead of being passive. So you can come up with maybe a couple of different positions ahead of time that you like to sit in. And the key is allow yourself to change how you sit partway through a video call. As we develop a deeper connection with the body, we'll get better at noticing cues, like when the body is ready for a new position. This is yet again another reason that people can feel really tired at the end of a call, is you might, like, again, you're forgetting about your body, or you're just trying to sit still and you're just thinking about your body from here up, and then your body is getting tense, uncomfortable, and tired. So to start with, it can be good to try to sit at the edge of your chair, just to start with. So you can try to sit at the edge of your chair with your shoulders above your hips and your ears above your shoulders. So it's just like you're about to sit for a meditation, a nice alert position. And if you have long legs and you find your knees are higher than your hips, then you can just place a couple of pillows underneath you on the chair. That way your hips are elevated above your knees, which gives you a little more space around your belly, which makes it a little easier to have deeper belly breaths. Also, if you have shorter legs, it can be helpful to bring the ground up to meet you. So maybe pillows or blankets or books or whatever you're comfortable having your feet on, just so that your feet can make contact with the earth. Right? And I really recommend, just like Emily was talking about before, having feet flat on the earth. And if at some point you want to cross your legs, that's fine, right? You might play with every once in a while, coming back to having both feet flat on the earth as a way to ground yourself again, right? We don't want to be rigid, but just knowing that we have options. There are options to make ourselves comfortable. So also, if you prefer leaning back, so this is another option, you could start like this, and then you might find, oh, I really want to lean back. Helpful to have a couple of pillows behind you, behind your lumbar spine, that's your lower back, so that then you can lean back, because without it, I might be like this, kind of slouching. And if I have the pillows behind me, I can lean back and still be supported. So go ahead, choose a seated position now where you feel comfortable but alert. Just take a moment to find a position. And then just notice. Notice if you feel like you're holding your body together instead of allowing the chair to hold your weight. Just see if you can allow the chair to hold you. See if you can give even just 1% more of your weight to the chair. Trust that that chair is held by the earth. Yeah, just settling in. And we'll begin the meditation. So we're just going to begin this meditation on the 5 senses with a sense of sight. So take a moment to look around your space, taking in colors, shapes, textures. And allow your eyes to land on one object. And see if as you look at it, you can observe it without judgment, not liking or disliking it, but just being curious about it. Now let go of the sense of sight as you close your eyes, or you can gaze softly on the floor. Just take a breath in and let it out. And now notice what you feel. You might start with noticing the sensation of your feet on the ground, your sits bones on the chair, hands on the lap, the temperature of the room you're in. Sensation of clothing on your skin. Just continuing to scan your body for sensation. And land on one sensation, and again, see if you can sit with it without any judgment. Observing the sensation with curiosity. And if you find it challenging to observe your experience without judgment, you just notice that too, and see if you can not judge your judgment. Just let it be. Now take a breath in. And let it out. And allow your awareness to shift now to your sense of taste. Right, it might be subtle, might be obvious. Just notice what you taste. Notice any thoughts or feelings that arise as you connect with the flavors in your mouth. And take a breath in and out. Shift your awareness now to your sense of smell. Again, perhaps it's subtle or obvious, or maybe you smell nothing at all. Nothing is right or wrong here. We're just noticing with curiosity what you can or cannot smell. And take a breath in. And let it out. Now shift your awareness to what you can hear. Start with sounds nearby. Again, seeing if you can observe the sound without any judgment of good or bad or pleasant or unpleasant. Just listen. And now shift your awareness to sounds that are further away. And take a breath in and out. And now shift to an open awareness of all the senses, just noticing what your attention is drawn to. And taking a deep breath in, deepest breath yet. Just hold it at the top for a moment. And exhale, let it go. And open your eyes and now take in the room that you're in. Just take in the room that you're in, just as you began the meditation, just taking it in. And notice what happens in your body when you shift your eyes back to the screen. And so notice what thoughts or feelings arise as you re-engage with this virtual space that we're in together. It's really helpful to have moments like this where you tune into your body and notice how it responds to different situations so you get better at listening to your body's signals. It's also helpful to tune into these signals because they help you connect more deeply with the other people in the call, right? Even though you can't be in a room with these people and directly feel their energy, your body is still able to pick up on a lot, right? You can feel the connection to those people through your body's response to them. Especially if you put yourself into that present and open awareness through a meditation like the one we just did, or another mindfulness practice before a video call, you'll notice the impact that these other people have on your body and mind. And as a result, you'll feel a little more connected to them. You might notice how you felt in your body when you were more internally focused, and how that differs from how you feel in your body now when you're more externally focused, looking at the screen and my face. And see if you can maintain that sense of connection with yourself that you perhaps felt during the meditation while taking in external stimuli. So we're going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to talk about this idea of anchoring yourself. So one of the ways that we can maintain a connection to the self while taking in what's around us is to have an anchor. And this is a way to keep coming back to yourself. So as you connect with others, you can keep coming back to the connection with yourself. Just like if any of you have done a meditation class, often, especially in the beginning, you're given an anchor. It could be your breath, keep coming back to your breath when you get distracted or whatever it is, or a mantra. You can do the same thing in a video call to feel centered and grounded throughout. So you could use your breath, a sensation. You also could use a word, right? You could set a one-word intention at the beginning of the call, and then you continue to come back to the word during the call, right? It could be something like open, rooted, soft, present. You could also, just like Emily spoke about, come back to your anchor object. I also have a chunk here of citrine here, and it's heavy. It really feels like an anchor. Or you could come back to one of the 5 senses. So in that meditation, if connecting to sound, for example, or something in your body, if that felt grounding, you could come back to that. So I do this all the time in video calls, all the time in life in general, all day long. So I, over time have developed this body awareness, and I'm aware when my body starts to get tense and I'm starting to feel stressed or restless, or I'm getting into that kind of disembodied Zoom zombie state and I'm getting absorbed by the screen. And I'll notice it and I come back to my breath. I'll come back to a feeling of softness in my body. And I'll do this again and again. And Emily's going to talk in a bit more about how we can continue to incorporate this in a Zoom call. So go to the next slide. I just want to say that if it is not your thing to sit and meditate, because it is not everyone's thing, and that's totally okay, you can connect to yourself also through moving your body. And I recommend doing both, right? Doing a little meditation, it can be short, and also moving your body. It could be dancing, jumping up and down, yoga, anything, walking. It could be 5 minutes, an hour, anything that just helps you engage the self, connect to the self. Because once you've engaged and connected with yourself, it's going to be so much easier to engage and connect with others. And I really want to highlight that others will feel the impact of what you've done to take care of yourself. What you do for yourself will benefit others. And I'll pass it on to Emily.
Thank you. It's so nice halfway through a webinar to get led through a meditation, because now I feel more down-regulated. So thank you, Eve. Cool. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, of course, the all-important, the final layer here, which is to engage with others. So we've already prepared our space. We have connected to our internal sense of space within ourselves. And now we have to bring in the layer of the video call where we're actually interacting with other people and taking in the information of this digital space where we're interacting. And so much of this connection with other people is about building a fluid interchange between anchoring and noticing. So you can go to the next slide, Amy. So like Eve was explaining, anchoring is about using something as your anchor to continually check in and recenter and get grounded in your body in the present moment. So one thing that I really want to emphasize, which Eve kind of already mentioned, but is that the goal here isn't to sort of find this state of equanimity that never leaves, right? Like to get to that perfect present, down-regulated, engaged, intentional state, and then, you know, somehow sustain that consistently throughout the call, right? That is incredibly challenging. And so something a little bit more reasonable to aim for is the practice of, like Eve said, noticing when the tension begins or noticing when the disconnect begins, and then using that as your reminder to reconnect with your anchor. So for me, I use a lot of different anchors. I usually have my physical object here that I can grab onto to bring me back into my body. I also really use my feet on the floor a lot. And what usually happens when I connect to a physical anchor is I notice that my breath responds. Like I put into the chat when Eve suggested to scooch to the edge of the chair, I had been sort of sitting back in my chair and I did that, and suddenly it just opened up my torso and my breath deepened without me having to do anything other than just make that slight adjustment. So the fluid interchange between anchoring, which is about coming back into the self, and noticing, right? Observing and taking in information from the external world, and specifically from what's going on in the video call. So noticing is about lightly observing other people on the call and how those observations, noticing how those observations are causing shifts in your breath and your body and your feelings. So it's sort of like a cyclical process of coming back into the body and then taking in information and then noticing how that's landing on your body. So that's why I've put these sort of circular arrows, because it is a continuous process and a sort of rechecking in. The reason that I put lightly observing is because I want to make a distinction between focusing or trying to pay attention and just this sense of allowing, inviting information in. So being in a state of such groundedness in yourself through your anchor, that information can come in, you can lightly observe it, be present, but not narrow your focus into a fatigue-causing state. So we can go to the next slide, Amy. So a lot of the energy that drains out of us during a video call has to do with that, that focusing in and sort of anxiety about how we're being perceived, right? What do I look like to people? Am I being reassuring to my colleagues by performing, paying attention? Am I being understood? Do they get what I'm saying? And so when we shift the attention again from that sort of belabored focusing and narrowing into just actual curiosity about other people on the call, we can loosen that grip a little bit on how we're coming across and allow ourselves to listen and respond with a little more ease. So if you could go to the next slide. Yes, okay. So in a minute, I'm gonna lead you through just a short exercise that, that we teach in our workshops that I developed called Observing in Delight. And so this is really about sort of training yourself to have that access to that light observation where you're able to take in information and find a sense of delight and curiosity about what's going on with other people. So some of the things that you might start to pay attention to when you're on a Zoom call are interesting things in the colleague's frame. So for example, when I see Eve, and this is something that I always mention when we're on Zoom when she's in this house, because there's so many beautiful, warm, wooden details. And because she's on a smaller screen, it's harder for me to see right now, but like the warm wood in her house, it changes the way that I feel. And so to just notice that lightly and kind of take it in and be a little curious about it really helps me to sort of stay in that open, flexible state where I'm able to listen and take in what she's saying, but also stay in my body. You can also notice the person's body language, their voice and their energy. Just taking a slight shift to be a little more interested in what's going on for them, moving the attention from how do I feel or how do I look to how does she feel? She's leaning a little bit to the side. She has her hair up. She's wearing this collared shirt. She looks pretty relaxed and she's smiling in response to what I'm saying. And that made me smile. And I felt that kind of in my chest. It changed the way I was breathing. So what is that if not human connection, right? Although we are doing that through this virtual platform. So sometimes it's just those little mental shifts, those little practices of noticing that can help just let us sigh a little bit of relief and find a little more ease. Great, so here's a little exercise that we're gonna go through quickly because I wanna leave time for some questions. And I know I got one question about embodiment that I wanna answer for sure. So this is observing in delight. And this is something that you can practice while you're on a Zoom call, next time you're on a Zoom call. So actually, Amy, if you could put it back to the video view so that our videos are a little bit bigger, I think that would serve better if people want to try this exercise. Oh, there we are. So great. So the way this exercise works is you take your 10 fingers, or if you don't have 10 fingers, that's totally fine. Any amount of fingers will do. Place them on the tops of your thighs. So on your lap. I'm going to have them in the frame so you can see mine, but imagine that they're placed on the tops of my thighs. And each time that you notice a shift, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. You are going to practice noticing in the ways that I just mentioned, noticing details about the backgrounds of both my and Eve's screens here, details about what we're wearing, our body language, anything about what you see. Just notice, practice noticing and finding a little delight or curiosity about what you observe. And then as you do that, you're going to lift one finger each time you notice some kind of a shift in your breath or body or thoughts or feelings. So that sounds a little complicated. The important thing about this exercise is not to overthink what constitutes a shift. So if you feel like something shifted, okay? It's really just about strengthening that muscle of noticing and observing and then coming back into the body. So noticing and then anchoring, right? Okay, so here we go. We're gonna start and Eve and I are going to do it together. And I'm gonna do mine on screen and Eve's gonna do hers off screen. And then we'll lift our hands up when we're all done. You raising your hands was my final shift. So we were pretty aligned up. Nice. Okay, very nice. So that can be a little bit of a, kind of a pithy exercise the first time you do it, but having your fingers on your lap and just practicing noticing what you're feeling in your body as you take in other people is really gonna help you to stay anchored and grounded while also interacting with them in a way that doesn't clamp down and create a focus that is going to facilitate fatigue. So thank you for indulging me with that exercise. And now we have about 10 more minutes and we're gonna go to our, first, do you want to talk about Connect and Create? Cool, so we'll talk about Connect and Create. Eve, do you want to talk about the workshop?
Yes, so We talked about it in the beginning, that we created this workshop, Connect and Create, and then adapted it for what was going on in the pandemic, that we're all online all the time. Many people who were not using Zoom before now are. And so we have this workshop. We have another one coming up August 14th and 16th. So it's a two-part workshop. You do show up for both. The 14th is a Friday night from, I think, is it 7 to 8:30? And then Sunday from 1 to 3. There's more information about it at this link, Connect and Create Zoom Edition.eventbrite.com. That's where you can get tickets, get more information about it. You'll get a little bit of what we've just talked about today, but it's going to be much more interactive and a very cool creative project that we get to do. And then we get to discuss our creative project on the Sunday. And Emily, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, just that, you know, if you enjoyed what we talked about today, it's just an opportunity to just go deeper with it. And like Eve said, be more interactive. And then also to engage with community around what is our relationship collectively with these platforms that we find ourselves using so often. So it's a really, go ahead.
I was just saying, it looks like Lindsay was able to put the link in the chat for.
Yes. So if you want to find out more, you can click there. I just want to address before, I don't know if you have to leave. Dorothy, I think you had a couple questions. One was about Dorothy Miller. You asked if we could recommend any additional resources for mindfulness that are really good. And also you asked, I think it was you who asked, what do you mean when you say embodiment? Anyway, whoever mentioned that, I'll just answer the embodiment question really quick. So in figuring out how to talk about this with clients, I did what any good student would do, and I looked it up in the dictionary. And I like the definition that pops up. It helps me to kind of understand and help others understand. So embodiment is defined as a tangible or visible, I prefer tangible to visible, but a tangible or visible form of an idea, quality, or feeling. So anything that you are trying to connect with, whether it's ease or, storytelling, impactful storytelling. To embody impactful storytelling means to bring that with you into a space. And for me, the body that's hidden in the word embodiment really roots me in how I help people get there. And the way that I help people get there is to connect with physical sensation, real sensation in the present moment. So it's not an idea, it's not some kind of disconnected concept, but it's really rooted in finding connection to the present moment through sensation in the body. I hope that helps. And then Eve, do you want to recommend any mindfulness?
Well, yeah, in regards to resources for mindfulness, I don't have something off the bat where I'm like, this is my go-to. It's kind of been an ongoing process for me of learning from different people. There is so much out there. I might reflect on it a bit and let that be a part of the email that we send out, that Lindsay sends out if I think of something that would be really good. And I just put in the chat a link to my meditation. So I think actually that link worked. But yeah, I have to think about that. John Kabat-Zinn is I'll write that name in there. But yeah, I'll think more on it and we can send it to you, whatever I come up with.
I would recommend to people right now, I just listened to an episode of the podcast On Being with Krista Tippett, and she interviews Resmaa Menakem, who is a somatic trauma-informed practitioner who works specifically with racialized trauma and talks a lot about this is a little more on the somatics embodiment side, but if people are interested in the idea of embodiment, and especially in this moment with, exploring and discussing racialized somatics and understanding how to be embodied in this moment that we're living through, Resmaa Menakem is a great resource, and that podcast episode in particular was really great to listen to. So I'll just quickly find that and link to that. Does anyone else have any questions that they want to throw in the chat box before we wrap it up?
There is in the Q&A.
Right, we have some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that people can see your faces. I actually want to kick off with a comment, a really lovely comment. You have such valuable gifts that you're sharing. Wish previous generations had greater openness to these practices for virtual and actual relationships. Much gratitude. So it was really, that was a lovely comment. So we had a question from Gail asking, do you recommend incorporating meditation? Oh, I think that one was answered already. Maybe not. Recommend incorporating meditation at the start of work meetings. If so, do you have any tips to get buy-in from colleagues who might be skeptical?
Yeah, I saw that a couple people answered. And yeah, it's definitely my dream that all work meetings always would start with a meditation. Not only to, you know, to do all the things that we talked about today, but also to create a little boundary around that meeting, so you're able to have a moment where you let go of whatever just happened in your day and you really take a moment to land in that space, right? So that we're not taking everything that's been going on into that meeting. As far, I saw that Monica answered and said in terms of the buy-in that, you know, she says, I ask people to do a 1-minute breathing cycle, breathe in, hold, exhale out. And it's remarkable how people go along with it as soon as you suggest it. I think that's true. Mindfulness, meditation, breath work, it's all becoming more and more common. It's becoming, people are talking about it much more. I think that, you know, and this is what I was talking about in the beginning, that I love to just offer these little snippets of these exercises, like you could do the 5 senses meditation in 1 minute, right? You could do really short things. And in terms of the buy-in, I just think that people are getting more used to it. More people are talking about this. So yeah, Emily,
I think also maybe, I mean, if you're in a leadership position, like if you're the one running the meeting, I think just feel empowered to take a collective breath. That's a really easy thing. And you can even make it about just, you know, I think it would be great. I'm sure we're all feeling disconnected. I think it would be great to just take a collective breath, to kind of center ourselves before we start the meeting, and just feel empowered to recommend that. If you're not in a leadership position, I think that maybe reaching out via email to whoever it is that's going to be running things, and I don't know, mentioning that what you got out of this webinar, for example, and sort of recognizing that these tools are really applicable for these kinds of issues, and just recommending a collective breath, or if it's maybe a little bit more of an adventurous group, a short meditation to try. And I think it's really about just, stepping out and sort of taking the initiative to recommend that. And then most people, I would assume, would respond positively to it, because I think everyone's feeling the drain of this moment and of, you know, being on these platforms so often.
Great.
And hopefully once they do it, they'll realize how good it feels and what a difference it makes to start a meeting that way. So hopefully it would just become the norm.
So we have just a couple more minutes. I'm going to ask the last question that came in. What are your thoughts about using an image on a Zoom call instead of a live image? Is there a protocol?
I think it probably depends on, you know, I guess I'll answer it this way. I'm interested in questioning protocols like that. Similarly, the idea of having like a neutral background or these virtual backgrounds to sort of hide where we are. We're all Zooming in from our homes, right? And so for me, it's kind of about normalizing what feels like vulnerability, right? Of sharing details about where we are. I'm like in my bedroom right now because it's the only room in my house with an air conditioner. But I've done my preparation, I've cleared the space, and I've grounded myself. And so I feel good sharing the details of my bedroom with you all, because here we are having this webinar. So I think it's, in terms of the photo instead of the video, I don't know, Eve, do you have thoughts about that? I think it just has to do with what makes you feel good. But I think that if you're the only one with a photo, it might sort of, I think it has to be collective. Either everyone has to have their video turned off or everyone has their video turned on. Because I think that doesn't facilitate real connection. What do you think, Eve?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But I think it just depends on that particular call. Is it a work call? Is it, you know, it depends. And just based on the talk we just gave, the more you can do to connect and to make this real, the better. So of course, seeing our faces makes it more real. Having a real background makes it more real. We just want to give more opportunity to actually connect with a real human being in reality. So the more you can do to make that possible, the better.
Great, good. So we have one last question. Tracy has asked, and I think you've addressed so many of these things, but as the leader of classes via Zoom, how can I make it more personally engaging and comfortable for the participants?
I'm curious what kind of class it is, just if Tracy's still here, because it totally depends. Like, I've taught acting classes to kids, and I find that, you know, really getting in their face this way and like using the constraints, thinking of this as almost like a movie screen and thinking about, you know, breaking that fourth wall can be really helpful to kind of keep adult Bible study. Oh, cool. So that's wow. Eve, do you have, oh, Eve, you're frozen. Oh, there you are.
Uh-oh.
Do you have thoughts?
Yeah. The first thing that came to me is just if it's possible to do anything to continuously engage, not continuously, every once in a while, as often as you can, engage students. So I had to finish my time at NYU online, and what I found challenging was that some of the professors didn't engage us enough, and that means that the viewers will go into the Zoom zombie state much more easily. So anything you can do just to ask questions, to get them to just, you know, I don't know if you're gonna do anything with the body and be like, just take a moment to feel your feet on the earth if you want to, and then move on. But anything you can do to get them to be like, oh yeah, this is real human connection and someone's talking to me and I'm here too. And just to feel that, yeah, just to make it more real. So opportunities to engage.
I think also breaking it up so you give people a break with activities. Like, we do a free writing portion in our workshop where people go away for like 5 minutes to do a free write on a topic, and it gives your eyes a chance to rest, and you get to look down at your notebook and like kind of come away from the screen and stop listening and kind of go back into your own space and then re-engage. So any way that you can find to give people like an activity to do that isn't just a 5-minute break, although taking breaks I think is important too. But anything you can do to help people come back into themselves and then re-engage with the group, I think is useful.
I just wanted to speak to Claire, who wrote in the chat,
Thank you.
Those of us who spend all our days sitting in a walker have found having a time out for movement in a meeting. Otherwise, if we stand or stretch, we distract. Yes, absolutely. I think I was talking to Emily about that at one point, just like I want that to be a more normal part of the meeting where we take a moment to stand, stretch, do whatever it is to move, or just maybe make it, I guess it will just be distracting, but just to make it more normal to stand up and stretch. Just like I was saying before, it doesn't feel good to make ourselves stay still and we get tense that way.
Great.
And at times too, again, like normalizing the need to move our bodies. So, you know, there are ways that you can find a little bit of stretch in the body without doing like a huge stretch like this. Although I think there's nothing wrong with kind of giving a little stretch while you're on your meeting, because I think we all feel that. And again, it's a way for people to see that and kind of feel like it's okay to be a little bit more human and vulnerable. But also something that I like to do that's not super obvious if you're not able to get up is to just kind of shift my weight on the chair, like between my two sits bones, and just find the subtle movement in sort of the bottom, the lumbar spine, and also to rock back and forth, like to curve the bottom of my spine back and then forward again. So rocking on the pelvis, sometimes just like a little shift like that, or as Eve said, adjusting the way you're sitting can bring some breath in and help you kind of give you a little oomph to kind of continue further than if you just were kind of stuck in one position.
I see that there's a comment actually from Marcy, making my chair more comfortable is huge for me. And I can say personally that I actually invested in a really good chair, and it changed my workday entirely. I mean, finding that comfort level physically made me much more comfortable psychologically and more focused. I wasn't focusing on being uncomfortable. I was focusing on my work. It just helped so much. So we have, I know that we've gone over a little bit, sorry. And I just want to get this one last question in, if you don't mind. And certainly folks, if you have more questions, we're happy to forward them on to Eve and Emily. And I certainly encourage you to register for their August workshop as well. So Susan asked, what about a Zoom interview and your animals show up? And I could almost cue my dogs to come running from upstairs. I had been banishing them, but do they add personalization in the interview?
But, you know, it depends how, is it like a dog that's barking a ton? It depends, right? But yeah, people love pets, so.
I think in a lot of cases, I think in a meeting, it could give the opportunity to like provide a little relief to people and let there be a little release of tension. So we all kind of have a collective distraction, and we all kind of laugh it out and release some of that tension and then move on. I think that for me, if I was interviewing for a job position, I would want to make sure that anything in my environment was going to support my ability to be present. So for me, I think it's about like, what is it going to do for you to have the animals running around in the back? If they're super chill, I think it's fine. But again, like Eve said, if they're barking, or it's like, I'm in a group with a woman who has a white, like cockatiel, is that how you say it? Cockatoo, like a parrot. And it's a group where we discuss serious things. And sometimes when her parrot will just start like bobbing, and it is a little distracting. So I think use your judgment with that one.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you so very much for this amazing presentation. It was really terrific. Oh, there was actually one more quick one. Carol asked about students who shut off their video halfway through a class. Is there a quick answer for that?
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's a quick answer other than just kind of, you know, I guess finding a little bit of empathy for why someone might do that, and feeling the need to do that. I mean, I have kids, sometimes I work with kids who do that, or they like change their name, and it's like there's so much going on. And so I think it's less about trying to control other people and more about seeing what you can bring to the vibe, to the energy of the virtual room to encourage people to keep their video on. So I would say start from what can you do to encourage that and not to be attached to the outcome. What do you think, Eve?
Yes, absolutely. The empathy for what they might be going through. Again, having finished NYU while through Zoom, just recognizing they might need to take a break, and then, you know, using that as information. Maybe you're able to address it next time and be like, I'm wondering if people are getting really tired, or if it's hard for people to look at a screen, and use that as a way to bring in some of these practices and be like, I'm wondering if the reason everyone's turning off their screens is because it's hard to look at the screen. Here's some things maybe we can incorporate, or maybe we can do something at the beginning, or take a break for a breath or meditation halfway through.
Great, good. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up because we have gone almost 10 minutes over, and we really appreciate everyone sticking with us and staying till the end. It's really been amazing. And again, we have recorded this webinar, so we'll be able to share that on our YouTube channel. And again, Lindsay, if you could actually put your email address in the chat box, so if anyone wants the slides, we can send them as well. We've got some more webinars coming up this summer, and we're in the process of planning for the fall. So please do look out for those as well. And thank you so much for supporting our alumni community and engaging us in a really meaningful way. We are certainly in surreal times, and maintaining these connections are so incredibly important. And we really appreciate your time, and to all the participants as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.